Welcome to the Everything Culture Podcast. It's your host, G Jack, along with my co-host,
Drake. Or Mr. D713, whatever you want to call him.
Whatever you decide to go with today.
Exactly.
We got two special guests in the building with us today. Kind of in the building, in our own home, but home.
Oh,
213, you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. I would like to introduce our two guests. We have Clara. I don't know exactly what she's posted where I'm at right now, as well as Melody. And they're with the Intersectionality in Diaspora. Am I saying that correctly?
Nope. It's a mouthful. It's okay. It's intersectionality in the diaspora.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Mm-hmm.
You made it sound so much better. Thank you.
I have a way with words.
Yes, and I've been knowing one of these great individuals for a couple months now, since I've been in the Seattle area. I would like to say I've made a friend, to say, and, good people attract good people. So she has good energy, and I was telling her about the podcast, and I remember that earlier this week, or was it last week, she texted me like, "Oh, I'm listening to your podcast," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" Like, especially when you have a coworker. But I really appreciate the being a listener as well as a fellow podcaster. So we wanted to invite them on to get their perspective on their culture, their views, and you know how we do it here. So would y'all like to say anything, ladies? Introduce yourselves quickly.
Clara.
Yeah, sure. So I am Clara Olivo. My pronouns are she, her. I am Salvadorian. I've been living in Seattle for 3 years and lived in Texas for 10 years before that. But I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, which is where I met Melody. And I'm really awkward just right off the bat. Gonna just say that right now, and I don't know how to talk to people, so if I start saying weird things or doing weird things, just know that and I have no idea what I'm doing. So that's me. Hi, I'm Clara. And I'm awkward.
And I'm Melody Villagomez Ortiz. That's a big old mouthful as well, right? I am of Guatemex descent, Guatemalan Mexican. I was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. Currently living in Norwalk, California, which is not that far from South Central, right? And Claire and I met when we were I was 11. You were a year older. Right? We met in band class. Yeah. We met in band class, been friends ever since. So.
What instrument did you play in the band?
Try to guess.
Clarinet.
Yes! How did you do that?
He got you. Okay.
I just know.
What did I play?
You were probably saxophone. Or,
I was going to think the same thing. I was going to say
drums. No, not drums.
You're not going to get it. It's cool.
The flute.
You got it.
It took you 3 tries, but yes.
No, I was going to say flute, but I didn't want to seem like I was being sexist or something. So I tried to throw some other stuff out there first.
Why would the flute be sexist?
I know.
Let me tell you a story.
Go.
Let me tell you a story. I was in middle school, right? Going to 7th grade. That's when you first decide you want to be in band or choir or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to be in
Shout
band.
out to Hubbard Middle School. Shout out to Hubbard.
I wanted to be in band, right? But everybody wanted to play the drums. I wanted to play the drums, but I guess I didn't know that the sign-ups were in the summertime before school started. So when I got to school, the only instrument left was the flute. And my dad was like, "Hell no, you ain't playing no flute. You ain't playing the flute." So ever since
oh man,
all the girls playing the flute.
See, you got trapped into a gender role right there,
Mm-hmm. Yes, because go ahead, Claire. I know.
No, you go ahead. No, shut up. You go ahead.
Because when we were in band, I only remember one, male playing the flute, right?
Yeah.
So it was a bunch of girls and then just one guy. I don't remember his name.
I only remember me, Ruby, and that's it.
She don't even remember the guy.
Yeah, she
She don't even remember him.
Yeah.
Well, that's because I was
Probably
I was working really hard to beat Ruby and get first chair because that I couldn't let that bitch have it, you know? Like,
I don't even remember Ruby. I'm like, I didn't even focus on
I
her.
remember Ruby. She
Oh,
was
wait,
okay.
Did you beat Ruby? Did you beat her? Did
Oh,
you get the
yes,
first
of
shot?
course I did.
Of course, yeah, she's so good. Yeah.
fuck Ruby. But but yeah, it's right there. I remember you trying to get them drums and stuff like that. I used to play not the viola. I used to play that. That used to be my instrument in orchestra. But
Nice.
you know, you never know. You could have been the best. You could have been a John Legend of flute playing. You never know.
Nah, fam. I couldn't even play the recorder in elementary. I days when I'm playing on flute, man.
You wasn't good in what high cross buns. You was hitting that. No.
I made like a 60, 70.
1, 2, 3.
Easy.
Oh, and quickly, cheers, everyone. You know,
Oh,
everybody got their
cheers.
cup.
Ching ching.
Salud.
Salute, eye contact, all that good
Oh.
stuff.
You gotta look at us. Remember?
What does that mean though? Like, why do you have to make eye contact?
You don't remember
I
from
don't
our previous
know.
episode, G-Jack?
Dude,
What?
that was like a week and a half ago.
I
No,
kinda
no,
wanna
no. I'm talking about like last year when we had what did she go by? B, when we talk about mixed children, biracial children, grown up biracial.
I wanna know if it's the same thing why I look at.
Well, you gotta
Oh.
listen.
Okay.
People can go back and listen to our previous episodes. So you tell us.
So,
Well,
yeah.
is it the same thing? Because I remember this was like 2 years ago that somebody told me like, every time you cheers or salud, right? It's you have to look at each other or else it's like 7 years bad sex. Same thing?
That's exactly it.
Damn. So that is a thing.
Mala suerte.
It's a
That's
thing.
exactly it.
Huh?
Yes. See, cultures, because the culture where this individual from, she learned this from her Caucasian side of her family.
Oh
So
wow.
I'm like, okay. And I never heard of it before.
So you mean to tell me all the black people in our family have bad sex?
Oh yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah, I
believe
guess.
it.
Well, who did I hear this from? I don't remember who I heard this from, but I had never talked about it with my family, so it had to be with somebody else.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, it was. That means you've been for 7 years,
I mean, I just don't like looking people in the eye, period. So
Yeah, I know. I was like that too. Yeah.
But why is that? That could be one of why don't you like looking people in the eye?
It makes me nervous, and it makes me feel well, let me back up. Oh man, that's actually like a really deep question, dude. You
Yeah.
don't even know.
You haven't heard anything yet. We're about to do the makings of you. So
Oh snap. Well, like I said, one, it makes me really nervous. Two, I have ADHD, so I can't focus and look in one place for like more than 5 or 6 seconds. So it's not that I don't want to, it's that I'm like literally incapable of doing it. And 3, I had strabismus when I was a kid. So strabismus is when your eyes are crossed. And so I had a surgery for that when I was really, really young, like maybe 3 or 4 years old. And so occasionally it comes back like when I'm under a lot of stress. And because I'm like perpetually stressed out, like I don't want people to see that part about me, So I just rather not look at people in the eye and show them that part of me.
well, thank you for sharing. I know somebody I love a whole lot that had that as a child and got that fixed as well. And I'm gonna have to Google, see what because that condition, I've heard a lot of people have it, and now people are able to get it repaired or fixed, what the case may be. But once again, thank you for sharing, because I'm the exact opposite. Like I used to say, I don't like when people wear shades, and I don't like wearing shades, especially when we're having a conversation, because I need to look you in the eye. If I can't look you in the eye, I don't know if you're telling me the truth or you're telling me a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how I came up. I've been in the court of law quite a bit, and I have certain tales of somebody's being honest or someone's getting nervous, and I'm like, and same thing when we're wearing masks right now. You can't see when I'm smiling, you can't see when I'm frowning. So eye contact is very important with me. But I absolutely understand. And once again, everybody have a different perspective on these things. But GJ, do we want to get into the makers of you now, or we want to wait till later? Okay.
Claire.
Actually, you know what? Let's do it after.
Okay, cool. I'm down
After
with
it's gonna work out better.
After I finish this bottle of wine, you mean? Okay.
Man, because I've learned, we if you listen to an episode, we do the makers of you. We try to do it on every episode, but sometimes we got a couple we don't. But it gets pretty personal sometimes. But
Shit.
Yeah.
But it don't have to be. It's just whatever you want to share. These are open-ended questions. If you're comfortable, but we will get into that later. But we're gonna start releasing them before the episode so that people can get to know you a little bit more.
Oh, nice.
But let me ask y'all a question though. We talked a little bit before we started recording, but you guys have a podcast. You share with us that you released your first episode last week, or you recorded your first episode. Just tell us the name of your podcast and what it's about and what you hope to get out of it.
Yeah. Thanks, Mello. So we started our podcast. Yeah, it was last week we released our first episode, and this week we released our second episode. It is called Intersectionality in the Diaspora, and it's really discussing the different ways that the Central American diaspora can come together and the different experiences that we face and how it's impacted within this, Western culture, this United States culture. And it's really a way for us to bridge, BIPOC communities together and, immigrant communities and communities that aren't just specifically from the Central American diaspora, but just beyond that. We all, especially as children of immigrants or children of any diaspora here in the United States, face a incredible amount of trauma and turmoil just by existing, and very often those stories are not heard. And because those stories are not heard, there is this big gap in community, and what we're striving for is to bridge that gap.
Sounds amazing.
Sounds like something somebody else is trying to do.
Isn't that beautiful though?
It absolutely is. Absolutely is. And, we're looking forward to listen to all the episodes, I would say. As soon as you told me about it, I had to go and follow and trying to like as many things as possible, even right now as we're speaking. But it's like the goal we have. We coming from the African American perspective or the African diaspora, and coming from all financial levels in the country, coming from having an understanding to one another, and ours based off Martin Luther King with his thought process or his speech, meaning that men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because of a miscommunication, segregation. So our goal is to get to know one another through conversation, and after conversation, we got to start making actions after that. But it's all a beautiful thing, and I'm loving, having more communities come together and having someone that's Salvadorian as well as Guatemalan American. Is that what you said? Guatemex. Okay. So we trying to bring everyone on the show, everyone to get their say, and share their cultures. That's the point of Everythang culture. Is we want to get to know everyone, because once again, people make assumptions every damn day, every hour, and until you just start having that conversation and talking. Same thing with the toasting situation. It's we learned something new. One of the corniest things I always say is every day's school day, but it's the truth. Every day you should be learning something.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's like that commercial. It's like, well, I know I'm aging myself, right? But I don't think it's around. It says the more you know, right? The more you know. You can see it, huh?
It's kind of like on G-Jack's background. It's like,
yeah, it is. Oh man.
it's true. I remember I am a substitute teacher, and I also teach adult school in Spanish. I got my BA and my MA in Spanish.
Okay.
I think, yeah,
Okay.
and so I remember it was like a couple years ago. I was in a 5th grade class substituting in LAUSD, and I remember these girls. I had to read a part of a book called Esperanza Rising, which talks about it's a great book if you haven't read it. It's usually for elementary students.
I'm an elementary level Spanish. It's okay.
Yeah, well it's in English. It's in English, but it talks about a Mexican immigrant coming to work. Her family comes and works on the crop fields, right? And she's coming from a richer society in Mexico to the United States. So I read a part in Spanish to my students that I was subbing for, and 2 of the girls came up to me and they said, "Oh, are you Mexican?" No, they instead of saying, "Do you speak Spanish?" was, "Are you Mexican?" I was like, "Oh, my mom is from Guatemala, my dad is from Mexico," and they had no idea where Guatemala was. These girls are 10, 11 years old, right? They had no idea where Guatemala was, so
What was their ethnicity, by the way?
Mexican American, right? So they asked me, "Where is Guatemala?" Because most of the time when I deal with students, they're like, "Do you speak Mexican?" instead of saying, "Do you speak Spanish?" Right? And so they automatically think everyone is from Mexico, even if they're Latinx, right? And so I said, "Oh no, this is where Guatemala is. It's Spanish. Everyone speaks Spanish, but they might be from, El Salvador, Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia." And I had to show it to them on the map and say, "This is from where Guatemala is." "Oh yeah, one of my friends is from Colombia."
Mm-hmm.
So, but the funny thing was that when I said, "Oh, my mom's from Guatemala, my dad's from Mexico." "Oh, where in Mexico is Guatemala?" Like, no. So that's when I showed it to them, and then I saw that little light bulb go in their mind, and then like, "Oh, okay, so not everyone is from Mexico."
Yeah.
And then I remember asking Claire. I said, "Hey, I wonder if my mom wasn't from Guatemala, would I think if everyone was from Mexico?" No.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely understand.
Yeah.
And it is a very common misconception within the Latinx culture, which is one of the reasons why our podcast came to be, is just breaking that silence and breaking that misconception. We like to talk about the Central American diaspora specifically because obviously that is what we know best, because that is our lived experience, and because we recognize it's called Central American erasure. When you think of Latinidad or Latinx culture, you immediately think, Mexican culture, because that is the dominant Latinx, culture that exists right now. And while it may be dominant in like media and in, just any other, what is this? I just got a text message from somebody. Crazy. Sorry.
Not for me.
Told you guys, I got ADHD. Sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay. And for our viewers, can you explain Latinx? Because I've spoken about it before, I think on an episode when I moved up here. Where I'm from, we do not say Latinx.
Yeah.
No.
You say Latino?
We say Latino. We say Hispanic.
Do not say Hispanic.
No,
not say Hispanic.
But tell us why we shouldn't say Hispanic.
Okay, go ahead, Claire.
Because when Hispanics tell us to say Hispanic.
Yes.
I'm kind of like, okay.
Ching ching, Claire.
Ching ching.
Let's go.
My favorite topic in the world, right?
Teach me something.
Very, very plainly put, Hispanic is the term from the colonizers. We in Central Latin America, we were colonized by the Spaniards. And fuck them. So I do not want to be associated with them, with that entire culture. And recognizing Latin America for what it is, or Central America for what it is, we strive, well, I should speak for myself, I strive to make that distinction any opportunity I can. Like, no, I am not Hispanic. I am not Latinx. I am Salvadorian. And it's really important for me to proclaim that, because for so long I was ashamed to do so, because Latinx culture, Latinidad as a whole, has overshadowed that identity for me. And, you know, I'm in my 30s now, and I'm finally at the point in my life where I'm like, no, it's okay to be Salvadorian. It's okay to say that I'm Salvadorian. And it's okay for me to, you know, disconnect myself from the perception of Latinidad or Latinx culture. Because when you look at the media, when you know, see what Latinidad looks like, it doesn't look like me. It doesn't sound like me. It doesn't live like me. It's so different.
So that explains a lot, because when I was younger, before I like really just knew all this stuff, I always used to wonder why, like, and I was about to say Hispanic,
Yeah,
because that's just what we were taught. And you're right, man.
yeah.
You know, just in school, and that's what they taught us. But I guess like Mexicans, I would wonder why they would get so mad, like when people would get them mixed up and say, you know, or like Spanish people. Well, like if they were from like Puerto Rico or something like that.
It's not even Spanish. It's Latinx.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so confused now.
But that's the point. And reason, everything you're saying, why we want to come on, because we're learning.
Yeah.
That's it. Because when we say where myself and G-Jack are from, you're only Mexican, Black, and white. You're not anything else. Like,
Boy,
even if you're Indian, you're
I've
Black.
been there.
Like, oh, you're Nigerian? Nah, you're Black. Oh, you're Salvador? No, you're Mexican.
No, you're
Oh,
Mexican.
you Chinese? No, you're white.
Dude, I did not
Mexican.
tell you.
Like Spanish people would get mad if you called them Mexican, which I didn't know the difference, because I was like, hey, everybody speaks Spanish. But now I understand. I'm like, why you would be so pissed off, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I have a lot of, sorry, Claire. I have a lot of friends that will say that, like, oh, Spanish people. I'm like, oh no, well, where is the person from? You know, they say, oh, they're Mexican. Okay, so it's Latinx or Latino. Like Latinx is like that. The term is used now because a lot of people are gender neutral, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why you say Latinx instead of saying Latino, because in Spanish, Latino means a male, right? Latina means a female. So Latinx is now used as gender neutral, right?
Gotcha. So it's covering men and women.
Yes.
So Latino, speaking as a male, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, and then she says she's Latina.
If you identify as a male, if you identify as a female, it's Latina. But if you're gender neutral, you know, it's Latinx. That's why the term came up. But a lot of people will say, like, oh, you know, oh, Spanish. But Spanish to me is somebody from Spain.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like somebody from Spain,
Yeah. Okay. It is true, like we all got colonized by the same people, even Filipinos, right? But I don't consider myself Spanish, right? I know I have that Spanish blood. That's why my term is Guatemex, because my mom is from Guatemala and my dad is Mexican. So
and the beautiful thing I would say for you all being Latinx, you can actually identify from where your home country or your original cultures are from. From us being African American, which is something by the colonizers, we've been African American, we're Black, we're Negro. You know, you can name all these things about us, but unfortunately, we don't know exactly what tribes we are from Africa. From the Igbo to the Igbo to the Zulu to being Egyptian, was very Nigerian. We don't know. So we kind of, you know, and I see that sometimes with some of my Latinx or Latin friends, how they want to identify for themselves. But I brought this up to some of my buddies in Texas. They're like, these are they're both Latinx, or they're both Latino. They're both Latino. They're like, don't call me that. Like, literally, I'm like, hey, this is, but once again, I'm in a whole new area, and I knew when I moved here, I knew it's a little bit more progressive. But they're like, but at the same time, one of them, he's biracial, he's Caucasian, and I think he's Caucasian and he's Latino. So he's like, just calling me Hispanic. That's what I'm fine with. But you have that mindset of even ourselves, we get to that point that we support the colonists' point of view. And this kind of where I think about with a lot of things going on right now. Have y'all ever heard of the term racial fatigue?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I am racially fatigued all the time, dude.
Oh, shit, tell me about it.
You want?
That's why
talk about that.
That's why we're all anxious and depressed, right?
At the root of your depression is colonization.
Colonists. Yes. Yes.
Just say.
And it's a very good show, or it was like a Facebook Live. These are the LPCs I intend to bring on that show in the future, near future. But the Facebook Live was about racial fatigue, and it's really hard for us, for anyone, I would say, to deal with being in a country or just a world that will look at you because of where you're from your culture, as well as for the color of your skin. And, all of us have some pigmentation in our skin, what I can see, okay? It from every camera or viewpoint I see here, it varies. But it's hard that when you just wake up trying to live and being born and going forward, and it makes you feel crazy for the things and the way you feel, but it's absolutely normal. So, I commend you all for being here and speaking about your viewpoints and your thoughts and try to educate other folks. But that's something that I think we have a responsibility to do. And I say responsibility, not responsibility. I've been drinking. But it's one of those things that, I thank you all for you all to do more of it. But it is tiresome. So do y'all ever feel like, well, you already said y'all get tired of it.
Yeah.
So,
I got a question for you. So, Clara, I got that right? Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, me looking at you, I would think, like, you were African-American. Like, you look just light-skinned African-American.
I thought the same thing at first, too.
So, like, growing up, did people think, like, did other people think that? Like, you're African-American, or, like, you have a different experience?
I love that you've asked me that question. Thank you so much. And it ties in with something that Brandon shared just a little bit ago, talking about the African diaspora and how, African American communities don't have that sense of closure or that sense of connection to the motherland. And that can be said also for the African diaspora that exists within Central America. There is a huge African diaspora that exists in Central America that, very much like here in the United States, has been oppressed.
Yep.
So there's a lot of anti-Blackness in El Salvador. I'll speak for what I know from what I
You say anti-Blacks, or you would say colorism, or is it a difference?
Well, I feel like there's a difference between anti-Blackness and colorism, though. I feel like there is something very specific and powerful and very, what's the word I'm thinking of? Goodness gracious, I can't think of the word right now, but
it's okay.
Malevolent about anti-Blackness.
Evil. Gotcha.
It's so evil. Yes. Thank you. I like long words for some reason.
I like them too, but we have to break them down for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, on the podcast.
No, but it's true. There is something evil about anti-Blackness. And I'm not saying that to like downplay colorism. I'm saying, you see it. It's written in paper. It's, there are photographs, there are videos, there are testimonials of how anti-Blackness has affected the Black community around the world, specifically here in the United States and here in, Western civilization as a whole, right? And there's a lot of that also exists within Central America. And so going back to your question, when I was a kid, I had people think that I was Black. And so my nickname as a child was Negrita, which is little Black girl. And so when you're living in a family of people who are lighter than you, and you are being called little Black girl, that is not a term of endearment as much as it is a term of othering. And no matter how other people want to spin it, right? Because you don't say, oh, look at that cute little white girl, right? And if you do, I mean,
depends on the context, but I see.
Right? Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there's no like the only word that I could think of is gringa, but even then, nobody says gringa. Like that's not
gringa. Would that be like the equivalent of like?
That's not a term of endearment. It's just an adjective. No.
No.
I don't really know what the equivalent is. It's just random white girl.
Yeah, I think gringa has kind of a negative connotation.
Gringa?
Does it though? Yeah. There is a restaurant in Texas named Gringo's, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I have never been to Texas, but
actually, I love Texas. Go to Texas.
Well, I'm just talking about my family. When we would talk about gringo, it would be like a negative connotation, like, oh, esa gringa, like that white person,
Like Karen.
Yeah.
Fucking Karen.
Karen.
With the good hair, that bitch.
They trying to equivalent that to the N-word.
No, and there's no way that
no.
No way. No. We don't.
They really try to pull that, but
they can't. Let them try it for 400 years at least and see how that goes for them, right?
You don't say, right?
No.
At least.
See, is there anything in the Latinx communities, like, because we see racism as well. We see racism through Latinx. It is, and I can say, and I say quite a bit. Unfortunately, being African American, you feel like it's us against the world sometimes. And I try to employ many of us, like, but we know we can't do it by ourselves. Being even from people from Africa that's not African American that would consider themselves, they look down on people being of slave blood. I've been called a slur of slave blood before, and I'm like, whoa, and something I take pride in myself is being African American. Is being the culture, the talent, the struggle, so many things we've been through and our ancestors went through. I am proud of those things, and I know we got a lot further to go, but something as far as coming from the Latinx community, what is something we can continue to do to come together and communicate with one another? I'm not asking you all to answer everything. You don't represent all of them. But...
No.
I hate that when people do that. I'm sorry. I hate when people do that, though. Like, try and group like one race all together and then they put all the pressure on you to answer the question for the entire race.
But it's not saying but I just want to know if she's one. So I just want to know her opinion or y'all opinion.
And this is where the concept of intersectionality comes into play, right? Because it's not just one thing that makes up who we are, So for me, it's not just being Salvadorian that makes up who I am. It's also that, the African descent that existed within Central America at that time during colonization. Slaves were brought from Africa into El Salvador, into Guatemala, into all of those countries in Central America. And, life continued. People thrived. People were hurt. People were killed. Like, all of the same atrocities that you think of here in the US also happened in Central America. And because of that, there's also that, not the stigma, but the attitudes and the behaviors towards people who are darker, that, colorism, that hierarchy that exists within color, which is why you would find, a 4-year-old girl being called negrita, like it's no big deal. Like, but why? You know, like,
Yeah.
and you know, and it's, for me personally, it's a very conflicting thing. So my father is what I would consider to be Afro-Salvadorian. Like, if you looked at my father, you would think that he's black, you know? And I'm really upset that I did not inherit his amazing hair, because, like, fuck, I'm just so mad. But anyway, I got my mom's hair, which is really nice too. But, like, anyway, sorry, this is, like, digressing. But, you know, the stigma that exists around an absent father, a black father in El Salvador, is the same stigma that exists for an absent black father in the US.
Get the
And
fuck out of
so
here.
I'm serious. I'm speaking from my own lived experience. Like, this is what I've observed. This is what I know to be true. And so when people would call me negrita, I wouldn't consider it a term of endearment. It almost felt like the scarlet letter, you know, like, oh, I am the daughter of a man who left.
You went back to high
You
school.
know.
Shit. Freshman year. Freshman year.
That was a good book.
You know, something we can all relate with, right? Maybe. And, you know, and you see it also within, you know, popular culture and within the Latinx community, like within the music, the songs. You know, there's a very popular song about a woman who cheats on her husband, and she has like 8 kids, and they're all blonde haired, blue eyes, but the one dark kid, you know, that's the only one that's her husband.
What's the name of this track?
What's the name of
this
the song?
Sorulo.
Sorullo y Capullo.
Yeah,
it's a great song.
That to me, because I'm not gonna be able to write that down right now.
It's a great song to dance to.
Yeah.
But if you listen to it, it's like, what the fuck? Imagine.
Go ahead.
Imagine being like 6-year-old me and like hearing that song at like the family barbecue, and everybody saying like, "Oh, Clara, it's your song."
You're sitting up Millie rocking to it, and you don't even know.
You know what?
I don't even know.
But they called it as your song.
They called it my song. Even till this day, that is my song, because, you know.
There's a song in the African American community called "Your Mama Smoked Crack Rock," and it's kids singing the hook.
Yeah.
Oh.
But check this out though. You know what I think that, and I was thinking about this today, like when I was bored, sitting at home quarantine, and I rewatched Django, and there's so many gems in that movie, man. Like it's so you just see how like so much stuff is passed down from your oppressor, and you think it's just normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you don't even realize that you are enslaved. You're enslaved, but you don't realize how mentally you are enslaved. You know, and it may be the same thing as far as you know, with them calling you like, you know, little black girl. It may seem harmless, but it's ingrained in them. Like it's been passed down from the colonizer that is okay. It's just you can say it in a joking way or whatever, but it's not okay.
You don't know that.
Derek, you touched on something so good. Melody, go.
But because it's just like, you know, when you were talking about it, Clara, like, I always, and we talked about this before, like I've always thought of it, because I was also called La Negra because my mom and my 2 brothers are white passing, right? They can pass as gringos, right? Because in you know, Guatemala, predominantly they're all lighter skin than this great caramel cutter, right? So I was called a negra, but I always thought of it as a term of endearment. Why? Because as I didn't really get it as, you know, and as I was younger, but even I have a song which is called La Negra Tomasa.
Negra Tomasa.
Negra Tomasa. Negra means black, right? Tomasa is a name. So, and still to this day, that song is mine, right? And even my friends will be like, "Oh, it's your song playing," you know, so I'm much more darker in complexion than them. But in Guatemala, and I think this is so crazy because they look down upon, which is the indigenous people, which they call them indios, right? And that's kind of it is a derogatory term, right? So, but in Guatemala, there's more indigenous languages spoken than Spanish. So that means there's much more population of indigenous people than, I guess, Spanish.
Descendants from
Descendants of Spanish.
Spaniards.
Yeah, Spaniards. So it's like, why? But I look at it as, okay, and I've been called an India because I'm much more darker than anybody else, in Guatemala or even in the Mexican culture. Like, you see it as a derogatory term because if somebody says, "Oh, you're an Indio," it's like the equivalent of calling somebody a wetback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my husband has been called that, and he's come home like very upset about it. Like, but you know, and I tell him, like, you should be proud of that because you did all this stuff, even though he didn't cross the border, like cross the river, his parents did. And it's like, you should be proud of
That shit's
it.
hard.
Yeah, and
That
like,
shit is hard.
I take it like, okay, you call me in India, that's derogatory to you, but to me, I'm super proud about it because I know I have indigenous blood in me.
See, I absolutely feel, and he has the right to be upset for the point of view, and you have the right to be proud from your point of view as well, because it's not the fact that he said it, the individual, whoever, it's the energy behind it, it's the hate behind it, it's the disrespect behind it.
Yeah, and I felt so bad. I felt so bad for him, and I cried. I was like, oh, because you're right. It is that energy and that, that intent behind saying that word, but I turn it around and I say, no, you should be proud of it, right?
And it goes back to that racial fatigue or how to deal with the trauma. Because at the end of the day, it's trauma. And how to rationalize it. And that's something I'm trying to learn more about. Like, how do you, on a day-to-day basis, rationalize racism or even colorism, if not? Or do you at all?
You don't.
I think we're all just still navigating this thing, man. Like, nobody really knows. Like, we just deal with it the best way we can. Some people adapt. Some people, like, I know, and this is like, no offense, Melody, I know you said like your brothers are like lighter skin that can pass as white. I know a lot of like Hispanics that aren't like that look, white. They won't even let you know they're Hispanic. They're just like, hey, I'm a white guy, and just kind of roll with it. But I think that's just their way of adapting to it,
Yeah, and then that's what we call it, white passing, because you get this white privilege, right? You get like, oh, like in Spanish it's like gozan this, so you enjoy, you celebrate, like that you could fit into it. You can fit to, you know what I mean?
And prime example is Ted Cruz. I didn't even know Ted Cruz was his Latinx, and his last name is Cruz. I didn't know. But
no, Ted Cruz is white.
No.
Ted Cruz is white. He's white.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, he's white the same way that Jeff Bezos is white. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Bezos? I never thought about that. Is he's white, right?
Yeah, he's fucking white. You think the fucking first trillionaire in the entire world is not going to be white?
No, is he white or is he Latinx?
I know. What is he?
Boy
is
white.
Claire.
Boy is white.
Claire.
Boy is white.
What are his parents?
I don't know. I don't know his family.
No, I don't know. I'm asking. I'm asking. Is it are parents Latinx?
Oh,
I don't know.
Let's Google it.
Thank you.
You Google it.
Melody.
I fucking hate Jeff.
I never thought
I'm
about
going to say
it.
something very controversial right now.
I know. I never
Fuck
thought
Amazon and fuck Jeff Bezos. There, I said it.
Oh, hey, we support some places over here. And
I just want to let me get to that.
His parents, his mother name is Jacqueline Bezos, and his daddy named Miguel Bezos. Hey,
Latinx.
He's Latinx.
Just because of the name? That's a really strong assumption, though.
Hold on. I'm looking
That's
at
a really strong assumption.
He was an American Cuban engineer.
Oh, he's Cuban.
Which was
wait, Claire.
Okay,
Claire,
but here's the thing,
you
right?
can't tell me I'm making assumptions when you made assumptions as well.
I know.
Oh, no. So, like, it's all, okay. Yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna and I'm gonna keep standing by the fact that Jeff Bezos is a white man because he continues to navigate and operate in the world as a white man.
White passing. White passing.
A white man.
Yeah, he's white passing.
Hold on. We had the same thing in the African American community as well. We called them sellouts. We called we were just talking about this individual the other day, GJ. The doctor.
The one who performed the brain surgery or whatever. Ben Carson.
Ben Carson. Yeah. Ben Carson, is one of the first African American doctors. Then he did the first heart transplant or something like that.
He's white passing too.
Oh, absolutely white passing. You feel me? He's made so many decisions and statements against the African American community. It's disgusting. Same thing with Candace Owens. If y'all ever find a time out to see who Candace Owens is, she's not that popular, but to many people, but she has a standpoint of being Republican. So anything's Republican, she's going to support that. And we're going to get into the makers of you in a moment, and we're going to ask, I don't know what brought that young woman or that woman into that thought process of how she feels, but anything that is towards the Black community in our culture, she's absolutely against. She's all for supporting colonization and what we've been through. It just is what it is. And I'm one of those individuals that I don't believe it is what it is. I always ask why, but it's something to look into. So we have those same things as Jeff Bezos, but when it gets to the point, at the end of the day, he did come from your diaspora.
Yeah.
So
Caribbean.
And one thing Black people say, and I say it quite often, all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
That's beautiful. I love that. But I also want to
on that note, guys, it has been a pleasure talking to y'all, but I have to go. Mr. D713 is going to finish the interview. But it's been great meeting you guys. I look forward to listening to the makers of you to get to know more about y'all. And hopefully we can do something else in the future.
Yes.
Heck yeah. We'll have you guys on the show.
I know.
Hey, we need to set that up.
Yeah.
I like this conversation. I learned a lot.
Yeah,
same.
Thank y'all.
Now I'm just going safe and I'm going LatinX with everybody. So that way I'm good.
Hey, teach people and say where you got it from.
And if they have a problem with it, just let me know. Bye.
Yeah.
G-Jack is still in Houston, so in Houston.
Oh, I miss Houston.